box that was in the box. It's a smaller box. Look at that. Zoom. Knowledge begins now. So, you want to buy a USB hub for music production. What do you need to know? The most important thing is power. To quote Jeremy Clarkson, power. That is, but not like power like the cars, power like power cable. So you see how this comes with a power cable? And that's because it's important. This is the UK plug. Now, this is incredibly important, and it's the first thing to consider when looking at USB hubs. Because basically, when you're plugging things in through USB, you can see these are USB ports, it's a USB hub, oh, it's in focus now, then basically the thing going into it usually needs power. Yes, some hard drives have power cables, and some devices have power cables, but some things don't have power, and sometimes you forget the power cable. If you're DJing, then you might have just forgot the power cable for your DJ MIDI controller. So, therefore, if possible, you want your USB hub to be powered, so that the USB hub has a power cable going into it, and that means the USB hub can send power. The USB hub can send power to the things you plug into it. Very, very important. And especially if you're buying a USB hub for the studio, you need to get one that's powered, because it just makes your life a million times easier. If you're DJing and maybe not using anything power intensive, maybe you're just using, it's all very dusty, but something like this. Oh, over here, whoa, look at that. If you're using just something like this that doesn't need much power, you may not necessarily need a powered hub, but if you're using lots of these, then of course you do. And there's no real way to predict it, unfortunately. As with many things in the computer world, the computer space, there is almost no predicting whether or not it will work. So if you think you may need power or you're in the studio, definitely get a powered USB hub. Literally, the only downside of not getting a powered hub is they're fractionally more expensive, like $5 more expensive, and you need a place to plug it in. So I suppose if you are DJing and you don't have as many plugs available, then maybe consider a non-powered one, but really think hard. Are the things I'm plugging in needing power? And if so, make sure the thing you buy comes with a power plug, so you can plug it in. And then this says power. It can send power through all the USB ports. Point number two. Point number two is speed. Again, just like a recording, yes, speed. Speed like Jeremy Clarkson. Jeremy Clarkson loves speed, not like that, like speed like in a car. Basically, you want this to be USB 3, not USB 2. USB 2 is super slow, like a slow, super duper slow, whereas USB 3 is super fast. And so that just makes common sense. Again, yes, technically, if you're just using something like this, which is sending, is it even in shot? There you go, it is now. If you're using something like this, MIDI controller type thing, that's sending super simple information, you may not need USB 3, but I mean, for anything that involves hard drives or anything complicated, sound cards, or, I mean, I bumped into the monitor. I mean, we'll get to that in a sec. But yes, if you're doing almost anything non-trivial, make sure your USB hub is 3.0, because it's much faster and it's not even much more expensive. Fantastic. Point number 3. Make sure if you're doing anything remotely important, you get a good one. If you get the cheapest ones in the world, they will break. So it doesn't just apply to the studio, but it also applies to DJing. And in fact, for different reasons, in both those situations, you need a good USB hub. If you're in the studio, chances are you're plugging something important into here. Maybe it's a hard drivey thing. Maybe it's another thing, or it could be anything at all. And if you're DJing, of course, you don't want it to fail. Remember, when you're DJing, the club could be humid, not, I said that weird. Humid, lots of humidity in the air. And that's when stuff starts to break. I mean, I've had USB hubs literally break mid-set. And then you're sort of unplugging MIDI controllers and plugging other things in and trying to make workarounds. And then you can't use some of your controller bits. So you basically don't want, I mean, these things, I hate these just in general anyway. But yes, the cheaper your USB hub, the more likely it is to break. And so if you're doing anything remotely important, just spend the extra $10 and get one from a name brand. I buy them from Anchor because all the reviews say they're the best, even though other reviews in my personal experience says they still are pretty useless. So, I mean, that's a whole other rant right there. But yes, if you're doing anything remotely important, make sure you get a good one. Because, I mean, it's all well and good having warranty, but you just don't want it to fail mid-set. Or if you're recording the perfect vocal part, and then a raccoon comes in and improvises a harmony over the top of the vocal part, and then the hub, oh no, the hub's broken, and now we've lost that moment in time forever. That's a thing that can happen. So to avoid that, make sure you get a good name brand USB hub. Here's the problem. You cannot buy a good USB hub. You can get better than useless ones. This is better than useless, made by Anker. I've got 2 or 3 other Ankers, the similar size and stuff in the room, but they still break. If you do anything at all, they just almost immediately break. So, and they just don't work perfectly. USB hubs are imperfect, and that brings me on to point number 4. I think, are we on to point number 4? Yes, we are. So yes, don't trust USB hubs. That's not very useful advice, is it? But it's true. So when at all possible, don't use one of these. If you have, say, 4 USB ports on your computer or 4 ports, plug the most important things directly into your computer. Don't plug the important things through here, assuming that it will all 100% of the time work perfectly, because it won't. Believe me, I hate computers. Stuff always breaks and doesn't work perfectly. So stuff like, for example, sound cards will be most important. If you're recording vocals, if you're recording anything at all, or if you're, say, DJing and you have your sound card going out to the mixer, make sure you plug that directly into your computer and then plug all your other bits and bobs, your MIDI controllers, etc., in through this USB hub. Equivalently for hard drives as well. If you have, say, 4 ports and then you have a hard drive, a sound card, and a whole bunch of other stuff, plug the hard drive and the sound card directly into your computer and then all the other stuff through the USB hub. Because USB hubs suck and they break and they're stupid and I hate them. And they always just go wrong and there's just no predicting it. And that's why Apple, I hate you for taking all the ports out of the computer. Why did you do that? The Apple's like, oh, you can just buy a dongle. You can buy an adapter. No, you can't, because they all suck. They break. I mean, who would have thought this would ever break, for example? This is a Thunderbolt to Ethernet cable dongle. Oh, just Apple. My name's Apple. Just buy a dongle. Oh, my name's Multiplier. No, because they break and they're stupid. And the same thing applies to USB hubs. I mean, it's ridiculous. Anyway, so yes, that's point number 4. Make sure you don't trust them for anything that you can work around. And finally, point number 5, if you're doing anything mission critical, don't overwork these things. So you can see here, for example, that there's lots and lots of ports on it, and there's some for charging, and there's basically just lots of ports. So if I'm doing something important, or even if there's just any way at all around it, I'm not going to be using all of these. So if I'm, say, doing something important, I've got hard drives, and let's say this is doing the main thing in my studio right now, or it's doing a main DJing thing, I'm not going to be charging my iPad for fun, because that's just making this work harder than it needs to do. These things, if you make them do anything slightly difficult, stuff just goes wrong. If you think about it, it's not magic. Well, yes, it kind of sounds simple enough. USB, just use a USB hub and it makes one USB more than that. But in reality, there's software and hardware that has to make this one cable kind of go out to lots of other ones. There's like software and hardware. And if you know anything about the world of computers, or if you ever used a computer before, you know that software and hardware both just fail every now and then. And sometimes they don't work for reasons that absolutely nobody knows. So yes, don't overwork them. If you're DJing or you're at the club, don't charge your iPad to watch Netflix later with Bay. That's not recommended at all. Best leave this just doing as little as it needs to do. Equivalently in the studio, don't use the charging ports if you don't need to use that to charge. Use a different charging port. Or if you have, say, 4 USB ports on your computer, I mean, you probably don't. If you have an Apple, you probably have 1, and then Apple's probably going to have 0 next year if Apple continues in this trajectory. So yes, if you have 4 USBs on your computer and you need to plug in 12 things, and that sounds crazy, but that's about the number I have to. If you have to plug in 12 things, then use 2 USB hubs and plug maybe 4 or 5 into one, 4 or 5 into the other. And if you have hard drives and then things that send less important information or less complex information, like sort of spread out the hard drives. If you have, say, 4 hard drives, I mean, I have 3 normally in any moment in time, sometimes 5, sometimes 6 actually. Anyway, yes, so if you have lots of hard drives with lots of samples on, this is music production after all, then try and spread them out a bit. There's probably some logical ways for us to spread them out in the ports here as well. Do research that if you're curious, because each of these USB hubs will have an optimum way you're supposed to put things in. Like, do you put them next to each other if you have 2 hard drives, or spread them out? That may sound ridiculous, but it's actually the truth. It's like on the computers, the MacBooks, you're supposed to actually spread out. So if you have some really high data sendage stuff happening, you're supposed to sort of put them on different sides of the computer and not on the same side because of the way the internal circuitry works. So this is kind of illustrating the point that things are just much more complicated than you might expect. And these things aren't magic. You can't just take one USB cable and 100% perfectly in every situation make it 5 or 6. And most frustratingly, it's inconsistent and there's no predicting it. So yes, I hate you, USB. USB, you suck. Oh, okay, this is something I should do in many more videos, but I don't, so I'm going to do it in this one. If you need to buy something, maybe it's a USB hub, then you can support the channel in a way that costs you $0 by going through my kit.com link in the description below. So go to the bit that says like, what gear do I use? Click any of them, it literally doesn't matter. Just kind of follow it through and go, oh cool, Multiplier uses this bit of gear. You can pick it literally anything at all. That takes you through to Amazon, and then anything you buy on Amazon for a few days or a week or something, Amazon sends me a few percentage points, and it costs you nothing more, but it helps support the channel. So if you say, oh, I'm buying one of these Anchor guys, I suppose, yeah, I'll get like a few cents or $1 or something if you purchase it through my link. Standard affiliate vibes. And yeah, so do check that out. My name is Multiplier, and shall we, oh wait, I've got an idea. In addition, this video is sponsored by me. That's why I normally put a thing at the end of this video. Wait, this video is sponsored by me, my website. But yes, do check it out. I've got new products, analog synths, theorem wavetables too. So if you're familiar with the first one, do check out, there's another one full of amazing wavetables and stuff. Fantastic. My name's Multiplier. I will catch you guys on the flippity flip.